and anyone you knew could be a traitor. And whether or not you believe that or think it's absurd, the fact remains that it led to many false accusations with zero evidence. Alrighty. So when politics come up between me and my mother, usually I'll say something like, there's so much hatred or there's so much propaganda. And she'll pretty much always respond with, it's on both sides. Never mind the fact that I didn't specify which side. So I will respond with, it's on both sides, but one is worse. And she'll say they're both bad. I've also tried to discuss the fact that American politics is shifting more to the right. I understand that this may have sounded like I was criticizing her views, considering that she is a right-leaning voter, but it's really about the politicians here. And I actually have the political compass to show exactly what I mean by that. So up here at the top, we have authoritarian. At the bottom, we have libertarian. And then left and right, this is like the economic section, and then up and down is government control or the amount of government power. So obviously this is full government control, this is no government control. The economic left and economic right can also be thought of as socialism versus individualism or communism versus capitalism. So what do I mean? US politics are leaning to the right. US politics typically happens, like the policies that get put into place typically take place around here. Sorry, that's a little far. About there, like that. So that's about where most of the policies are. And then as far as the politics go, you got the Republican Party and then the Democratic Party. Notice again how this side still blank, right? Still blank. And we're not even done over here. This is where so-called moderates land, right? So again, that's Republicans, Democrats, where the policies actually happen, and where moderates are. So my mother is a conservative moderate. She's right in here. Another thing that I want to point out while we have the political compass out is that the way the most of the world sees it, liberals are here, dead center. This is liberals. So that's kind of how you know that American politics are leaning to the right, is because our radical left is actually center, according to the rest of the world. And there are citizens with beliefs all around. This is just the government. Americans can believe anything. But there is no representation anywhere else outside of here. All right. So now that we've gotten that little tidbit out of the way, why is that relevant to today's video? You have probably read the title and see that we're talking about conspiracy theories. And well, the reason why US politics is skewed is partly due to conspiracy theories. We all know about the Red Scare and the belief that communists were trying, or worse, had already infiltrated the country, and anyone you knew could be a traitor. And whether or not you believe that or think it's absurd, the fact remains that it led to many false accusations with zero evidence. The US, which already had right-leaning founders, was pushed further right by the hysteria. Today, I want to take a closer look at how conspiracy theories are discussed on each side, because I feel like there's a big difference. And I think that it might also help explain why the Red Scare was so effective. So, First, I'm going to talk about left-wing conspiracy theories. Remember, we were talking about citizens when we talk about conspiracy theories most of the time. So we're talking about anybody from here to here. Okay, this is the range. Remember, there's a lot of different views here. We're going to have more diversity on this side than on this side. So anyway, left-wing conspiracy theories. Now, it's kind of hard to track down conspiracy theories online unless you're looking for specific conspiracies. So I decided to just go to Google and see what I could find there. And well, the first thing I found was the Gazette. This article called Six Liberal Conspiracy Theories Clouding Politics. So let's see what the Gazette has to say here. Number 1. Maybe the most outrageous liberal conspiracy theory swimming out there now is that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. Remember that word liberal. Liberal, that's here. Okay, we're not over here yet. We're only right here right now. I saw this post on X just the other day from Republicans against Trump. Wow, okay, so right off the bat, this liberal conspiracy theory is coming from a Republican. February 19th, the entire world, Putin murdered Navalny. The Russian government, Navalny died from sudden death syndrome. Trump this morning, sudden death of Alex Navalny. Donald Trump is a Russian asset. So this is a Republican, part of the group Republicans Against Trump, saying Donald Trump is a Russian asset. Now, I have heard this one before, but not quite in the direct claim here that they have the exact line, Donald Trump is a Russian asset. More so what I hear is Donald Trump has a concerning amount of phone calls with Putin, or he has a concerning amount of attention from Russia. Ex-Republican lawmaker Liz Cheney, sure, the Cheneys, issued a similar warning recently on CNN's State of the Union. I believe the issue this election cycle is making sure the Putin wing of the Republican Party does not take over the West Wing of the White House. Okay, that is an absolutely absurd claim. So sorry, the Putin wing of the Republican Party, the Putin wing. It's the first time I've heard that, and again, this is coming from Liz Cheney. Not exactly very far on this side, if I might say. Throughout Donald Trump's presidency, information including a dossier compiled by former British spy Christopher Steele posited collusion between Trump's aides and Russian operatives. Again, concerning amount of involvement between Trump and Putin. While liberal media outlets like MSNBC promoted these rumors, many more reputable news outlets never aired the claims from the dossier because they could never be verified. They turned out to be baseless. Special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation found no evidence linking the Trump campaign to Russian interference in U.S. politics. But now these theories have reared their head again as Trump runs for his old office and seems to avoid most criticism of Vladimir Putin. So there's no evidence linking the Trump campaign to Russian interference. But we do know that there was Russian interference. It does seem that he avoids most criticism, but he does still get criticized by Putin sometimes, occasionally, not very often. 2. A conspiracy theory Nadelson does worry about is one that claims a handful of reform groups on the right are trying to overthrow the Constitution. The most serious conspiracy theory is regarding Common Cause, said Nadelson, who is a senior fellow in constitutional jurisprudence for the Conservative Independence Institute in Denver. Common Cause, a watchdog group based in Washington, D.C., recently put out a fundraising letter that demonizes those seeking a convention for purposing new amendments under Article 5 of the Constitution. Okay, so it's demonizing people who want to make changes to the Constitution. Obviously, that's happened many times before. I don't know why people are so worried about changes to the Constitution. Many different groups that favor constitutional amendments on campaign finance reform, a balanced federal budget, and extending term limits to Congress have called for such a convention of states. Yes, so convention of states is something that I have heard about. They do want to put term limits on Congress. They feel that there should not be career politicians, which I kind of agree with to a certain extent. Common Cause depicts the whole lot as conspiring in a dangerous far-right plot, promoting a secret plan to rewrite our Constitution. So they're saying that because Convention of States wants to put term limits on Congress, which would require an amendment to the Constitution, that they want to rewrite the entire Constitution. Again, this wasn't a particularly left-leaning person that made these claims. This is the person talking about it. Nadelson is a senior fellow in constitutional jurisprudence for the Conservative Independence Institute in Denver. So this is a conservative talking about a conservative-led watchdog group who is accusing another conservative-led group. The Convention of States is largely conservative-led. They try to be bipartisan, but most of their leadership is Republican. So again, this is conservatives talking about conservatives talking about conservatives. This doesn't even have any mention of anybody that's actually even a Democrat, let alone actually on the left.
Another conspiracy theory out there is that right-wing groups will erupt in violence if Donald Trump loses the presidential race. Nadelson believes this is left-wing conspiracy theorists crying wolf.
Wolf, again, talking about Nadelson, but this one, right-wing groups will erupt in violence if Donald Trump loses. If you haven't seen the video footage of January 6th, I strongly recommend you watch it. I wouldn't say that that was a peaceful protest. So I do think that there is good reason to worry that there might be right-wing violence. Okay, I'm interested in this claim that leftist uprisings have killed dozens of people. As far as I heard, the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, not very many people died, and out of the people that did die, it was mostly tied to police involvement that those people died. And a few people did die during January 6th, by the way. Again, go watch the January 6th riot videos.
4. Another raging left-wing conspiracy theory, the Hamas attack was a false flag staged by Israel.
This is something I haven't heard about, to be completely honest. They're not really stating where this conspiracy is coming from. They're just saying it's coming from the left. They do claim that there's a lot of footage for that from smartphones and GoPros.
Number 5. The world can live without fossil fuels. Last count, about 79% of our energy in the US still comes from fossil fuels. Even if one assumes that fossil fuels are behind the rise in global temperatures over the last century, it is just not rational to believe that we can abandon fossil fuels for many, many years. If fossil fuel production were stopped tomorrow, the world would quickly grind to a halt.
True.
Without that power, electricity grids would see widespread blackouts. Within a few weeks, a lack of oil, still the major fuel used for trucking and shipping goods worldwide, would impede deliveries of food and other essential goods, a Washington Post science reporter wrote recently.
Okay, so this is coming from the Washington Post saying that we can't abandon fossil fuels tomorrow. Washington Post is kind of liberal. They're democratic at the very least. I mean, ultimately, like, we will eventually run out of fossil fuels, right? We've talked about this. We will run out of fossil fuels eventually. We need to prepare for that eventuality. And we do have the technology and the spaces needed. What we don't have is the funding. A lot of wealthy people would have to give up a lot of money in order for us to have the infrastructure for renewable energy to be built on a scale that could support that current 79% of energy that is being fueled by fossil fuels.
A Washington Post columnist, ABC News, and Gloria Steinman all recently voiced versions of an ungrounded conspiracy theory that when Roe v. Wade was overturned, the anti-abortion movement and the Supreme Court majority were merely pretending to oppose abortion while secretly wanting only to boost white birth rates for the sake of perpetuating dominance of the white race. 71 million Catholics who oppose abortion for religious reasons will be surprised to hear this.
I do kind of want to clarify that this has historical foundings. This isn't just a conspiracy theory that came out of thin air. It's also not one that I hear very often. In any case, the matter of abortion became a racial topic when it was discovered that the founder, I think that's who it was, I believe it was the original founder of Planned Parenthood, had actually wanted to mostly give abortions to Black people and sterilize Black people. Obviously, that has changed much since. Planned Parenthood is very, it's a much more leftist owned and operated now because of the general stance of abortions on the right. And this is an actual left-leaning conspiracy theory.
At the end of the day, my central concern isn't necessarily that the left embraces conspiracy theories more than the right or vice versa. A recent study published by Political Behavior found, in fact, that Americans who lean conservative in their political beliefs are no more likely to believe in conspiracy theories than liberals. In addition, many conspiracy theories are equally supported by both sides of the political spectrum, the study found.
So I think that is interesting that they have a study saying that conservatives are less likely to believe in conspiracy theories. Typically, I see studies and articles saying the opposite, that conservatives are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. In addition,
The larger concern to me is that people on the left and the right are losing their ability to distinguish conspiracy theory from plain old controversy or disagreement, or conspiracy theory from reality. My bigger worry is that facts no longer matter.
so this person does have some legitimate concerns, very similar to concerns to what I have and the reason why I'm making this video. While I do think there is a difference in how the left and the right talk about conspiracy theories, it does feel like there's just too many. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, and it can be really overwhelming at times to try to get through all the conspiracy theories and try to figure out what is real and what is fake. And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk more about it, but they don't have enough liberals talking about their conspiracy theories. This is largely conservatives talking about liberal conspiracy theories, and half of them aren't even liberal conspiracy theories. Half of them are coming from conservatives and Republicans. Let's go to a different article. Let's go to the New York Times.
The New York Times, left-wing misinformation is having a moment. America's right flank remains the chief purveyor of misinformation, but this summer's political tumult created ideal conditions for falsehoods to spread among progressives. Several elected officials, along with a top political aide for the billionaire Reid Hoffman, recently suggested, without proof, that former President Donald J. Trump may have staged an attempt to assassinate him in July.
So this is what I was looking for. New York Times is a little bit more left-leaning. And if you see the wording here, it says Donald Trump may have staged an attempt to assassinate him. That maybe, that's still there. The real problem here is who said it. As individuals, I think it is important that we voice our concerns when we have them, but it is not an elected official's place to voice their unfounded concerns to us. That's kind of irresponsible, to say the very least.
Mark Hamill, an actor and advocate for democratic causes with more than 5 million followers on X, criticized a conservative policy proposal by railing against ideas that were not part of the document. And last month, Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign misleadingly suggested, and posts viewed millions of times, that Mr. Trump was confused about his whereabouts during a campaign stop. Her followers seized on the posts to claim that Mr. Trump was suffering from cognitive decline.
Again, this is irresponsible to be making suggestions about those things online. It has unfortunately become the norm, and I don't think that we should be allowing that.
For years, the discussion about misinformation online has focused on falsehoods circulating on the American right. But in recent weeks, a flurry of conspiracy theories and false narratives have also been swirling on the left. Some misinformation researchers are worried that the new spate of left-leaning conspiracy theories could further polarize political discourse before the November election. More than one-third of President Biden's supporters believe the assassination attempt may have been staged, according to a poll in July by Morning Consult.
So again, this conspiracy theory about Donald Trump staging his assassination attempt, they continue to use this language, may have been staged. That's typically how I see liberals and left-leaning folk talking about conspiracy theories, with this iffy, maybe, I think, I feel like, that kind of language. And this particular conspiracy theory about the assassination attempt, this wasn't something that I was exempt from, but I wasn't online at the time. I didn't know that it was a widespread conspiracy theory, and I had actually forgotten about it until I read this article. But I remember talking to people in my day-to-day life being like, yeah, I do feel like something was a little off about that, especially when there was a second assassination attempt. That made me even more skeptical. I'd have to say, but, again, all of the language that I saw and heard surrounding it was pretty clear that nobody had any evidence of the claims that they were making. They made these claims like, "Something feels off about this. This doesn't seem right. We know what kind of person he is. We know that that's something that he would do." It kinda makes sense that that's a conspiracy theory that came out, and I think it's more important that we emphasize that there is no evidence on that and hold politicians accountable for the stupid crap they say.
I don't anticipate that we will collectively become less conspiratorial, said Enders, an associate professor of political science at the University of Louisville. If anything, the closer we get to election day, the more it'll increase. The researchers emphasized that the falsehoods and exaggerations were not as entrenched or as toxic as those permeating right wing spaces online. Several studies have shown that the political right is more likely to share false narratives and misinformation. Researchers at Northeastern University found that Democrats were generally better than Republicans at discerning true from false news.
Again, that's what I see more often than the claim that the Gazette made, that the parties weren't that different when it came to identifying conspiracy theories. I do find it interesting, forgot where it's at, but there's a point in this article where they talk about a more right-wing conspiracy theory about the Donald Trump assassination attempt, and it's that Democrats ordered the attack. They think that Democrats ordered the attack. And again, they don't have that language that I was talking about, the maybe, the ifs, the this feels off. I don't believe it, that kind of language. It's just a plain statement, Democrats ordered the attack. If you have proof that people weren't outright making that claim, please show it. But as far as I'm aware, they just outright made that claim. And that's not typically how the left talks about their conspiracies, their conspiracy theories. Let's go to this article by The Conversation. This article talks about the connection between Trump and Putin, which of course came up in the Gazette. And then they're mostly talking about conspiracies that have to do with international affairs. I want to kind of focus on this Donald Trump and Putin conspiracy.
Trying to topple Trump. Throughout Donald Trump's presidency, information including a dossier compiled by former British spy Christopher Steele posited collusion between Trump's aides and Russian operatives, and the involvement of Trump ally Anthony Scaramucci in a Russian hedge fund. There were even claims about Trump cavorting with Russian prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room. While U.S. liberal media outlets CNN and MSNBC promoted these rumors, they turned out to be mostly baseless. CNN sacked 3 journalists over the Scaramucci inaccuracies, while special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation found no evidence linking the Trump campaign to Russian interference in U.S. politics.
Again, I don't see leftists ever claiming outright that there is a link, that Trump has any idea that Putin might have tricked him. And that's generally what leftists believe, is that if Trump is doing anything for Putin, it's not because Trump wants to do something for Putin, it's because Putin has tricked Trump into doing it. We don't think that he's going to intentionally betray the country. He knows how bad that would make him look. But there is a lot of talk about the concerning amount of phone calls and whatnot.
These liberal conspiracy theories about Trump and Corbyn are as simplistic and fallacious as much leftist and rightist conspiracism because they too often ignore wider economic and political contexts. The anti-Semitism slur allowed the liberal media to overlook the Corbyn Project's widespread popularity among voters disaffected with the neoliberal settlement, the downscaling of state responsibility, and the increased power of the markets, in which liberals remain invested. In the Trump imbroglio, the obsession with Russian collusion excused liberals from acknowledging the socio-political factors underpinning Trump's rise, primarily the disaffection of many Americans in an era of declining wages and living standards.
Oh, okay. So they're just trying to say that the left was trying to use this conspiracy theory about Trump working with Putin to ignore other important things. They do talk about how some of those international conspiracy theories did lead to some poor military decisions and a number of deaths. Again, this is an article by The Conversation titled How Liberal Conspiracy Theories Can Be Just as Destructive as Their Extremist Counterparts. So you can read up more on the international conspiracies in that article if you would like to. Again, I'm not too interested in what's happening internationally right now. I think we're going to go to Reddit and see if we can find people who believe in these conspiracy theories talking about them. All right, so this is a person asking, why do people claim the first Trump assassination attempt was staged and or fake? People literally died from it, but it's fake or staged? Question mark. So then what happened to the man who died? Guy's name and others who were shot and injured. That's not what they're saying is fake. They're not saying nobody's saying that the bullets were fake. Everybody knows that the bullets were real because somebody died. I keep seeing this on Reddit and I just don't understand this at all. The only thing I see mentioned is his ear and the blood on his face, and that's it. And to that, he wasn't shot. I guess the people that died and were also shot never happened then. Yeah, this is somebody just misunderstanding what people mean when they say that they think it was staged or fake. See, this person says, personally, I think a preponderance of all evidence shows it was a legitimate assassination attempt, but I can also see why it's not a big stretch to believe it was a setup. And that's more so what people mean, is that it was a setup. Not that there was anything about it that wasn't real, other than maybe the motivations of the shooter. Maybe he was paid to do that. Who knows? The conspiracy isn't that the bullets were fake, though. I don't think it would be nearly as popular if Trump hadn't played up being shot in the ear while there was ample evidence now that he didn't get hit by anything, but bit his lip when he fell, got tackled by the Secret Service. But the actual argument for it all being a setup is retroactively applied because of what happened after. Hold on, this person is saying that Trump didn't actually get hit, it turns out, which I think is an interesting claim. I have seen the video footage of it, and he did have looked like a blood streak across his cheek, and then it did appear like it barely had clipped his ear. But he bit his lip when he fell / got tackled by the Secret Service. He didn't necessarily fall. He ducked down, and then, yes, the Secret Service tackled him. The actual argument for being a setup is applied because of what happened after. I think they're talking about the way that Trump stood up and was like, yeah. You start with everyone immediately talking about how an attempted assassination was a game-winning shot for Trump. The national sympathy for him getting shot would catapult him to re-election, no doubt about it. Well, if that's true and everyone is claiming that was obvious even beforehand, then why wouldn't Trump want an assassination attempt if it could be controlled properly? Add to that what appears to genuinely be lax security and defense, especially around an obvious shooter location. Again, that was something that was talked about a lot about that conspiracy as well, is the fact that the shooter was very visible and multiple people in the crowd had even gone up and talked to, I believe it was Secret Service members that they had talked to, and pointed out the shooter to them, and they chose to do nothing until shots were fired. Even a police officer who allegedly thought someone was up there with a gun just didn't seem all that bothered by it. Interesting. Then you have Trump so severely overplaying it over the next few weeks, people got sick of it fast, especially when it became clear he wasn't actually hurt and didn't actually seem affected by almost getting shot at all. He didn't suddenly become the wise, reflective leader the media kept hoping for. And lastly, you have consideration of the caveats. Would Trump actually care if someone died in the process of getting him reelected? Hell, we already have the answer to that. He doesn't give a. He is definitely the kind of person who would sacrifice a support. He definitely seems the kind of person who would sacrifice a supporter to gain sympathy and for lesser things than getting elected president. So this person explains it very well. The circumstances of the shooter being visible, people being aware of it and choosing not to do anything, and just Trump's personality and the way he played it up all do make it look suspicious, but that there is nothing that can definitively say that Trump set it up. At most, we can say that he might have given the Secret Service orders to let a shot be fired. I think that's the most that we can say might have happened, but yeah, this person explained very well that there is no substantial evidence. There's somebody here claiming that anybody would sacrifice somebody to be president, or anybody who wants to be president would sacrifice somebody. This is a person saying the assassination wasn't fake at all. However, Trump getting shot in the ear seems to not have happened, but he pretended he did. He wants his followers to believe he was shot when he probably wasn't. His ear looks fine in recent photos, and he won't release his medical records like every presidential candidate in modern history. I do think that that's an interesting one, that Trump never releases his medical records, but that's just the thing, is that that's he never releases his medical records. That's on brand for him. So that's not really evidence against him in this case. There seems to be a lot of back and forth about whether or not his ear was actually hit. I'm pretty sure it was grazed a tiny bit. I think this might just be a misunderstanding of phrasing, that his ear wasn't necessarily hit, but it was slightly clipped or something. I don't know. They aren't smart, question mark. Homie searchers were for both Biden and Trump. Trump just happened to be having a rally nearby. He was going to shoot at whoever was closest. Also, he killed someone. Also, he died in the process. Also, he was set up, trained snipers, and he had been kicked off his high school shooting team because of how bad a shot he was. Interesting claim, sir. Somebody said there are people who think 9/11 was done by the government, that the earth is flat, and that aliens built the pyramids. Of all the idiotic things people believe, this is far from the dumbest, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately. People suspect the attempt was fake because of how sloppy, incompetent, and stupid the whole situation was. Kind of like Trump's attempted coup, or Trump's attempted extortion of Ukraine, or Trump's wall that Mexico was going to pay for, or pretty much all of Trump's presidency. Just 4 years of sloppy, incompetent, and stupid, and a depressing amount of people want 4 more years of that, all because Trump gave them permission to be their racist, bigoted, stupid selves. Republicans have been sabotaging public education for decades, and Trump is the result of those efforts. So obviously, this person is very left leaning. It is kind of rude for them to be so blunt about what they think is happening on the right, with claiming that Trump gives them permission to be their racist, bigoted, stupid selves. I don't know for sure that that's happening. That's not something we can prove. Somebody just said because so much of it around him is fake. Somebody said because they're blinded by hatred. Somebody said we do it to own the conserves. Why should the fascists have all the fun telling lies and hurting people? We should be able to do it as well. What goes around comes around. Trump's ear was not hit. That is an unfortunately common sentiment. Well, there's multiple reasons people think that, but I would first like to make it clear I'm a Democrat, but anyone who thinks this was staged is just plain wrong and saying it for no reason. First, let's bring up the tragic loss due to this incident, and the one reason that loss may not convince people it wasn't staged because of one event, January 6th. This is a very long post, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but yeah, it's basically a Democrat saying, again, another more left-leaning person saying, yeah, it seems fishy, but there really is no evidence for it. Okay, so I'm looking for ties between Trump and Putin, and a lot of these are looking like more speculation about Trump's friendship with Putin. Okay, this one's saying Donald Trump has obligations to those who brought him into power. Putin ally. Somebody says they'll find out Trump betrays everyone, them included. Somebody says this is either a genuine outlawed threat to Trump telling him to do as he is told or else, or unfortunate yet top tier trolling from Russia saying out loud, yes, we did win the US election, thanks. We all know that there was Russian involvement in the US election, right? I hope we're on the same page with that. And it did seem like the Russian involvement was more geared towards helping Trump. But there, again, like we discussed earlier, there is no evidence that Trump was in on those plans. There's nothing to suggest that Trump even knew about what Putin was doing. Anyway, okay, I'm kind of tired of trying to find people claiming these supposed leftist conspiracy theories. I really can't find anybody who's outright claiming these things. So let's move on to right-wing conspiracies, cover some of those, and then we'll do the same thing and see if we can find people claiming these conspiracies are real. Obviously, the first right-wing conspiracy theory that I think of is the Red Scare. I mentioned that earlier. That was a right-wing thing that happened. There was a lot of propaganda around it and a lot of outright claims of this person's a communist or that person's a communist, again, with no evidence. That was definitely an event that was missing that language that I was talking about earlier with the may have, maybes, I thinks, and I feels. The next one is QAnon and Pizzagate. I find Pizzagate to be a very fascinating one because they say that there was a trafficking ring in the basement of a restaurant, a pizza restaurant, but no basement was ever discovered attached to that restaurant. So again, that was a single claim that had two falsehoods. There's a drug trafficking ring in the basement of a pizza restaurant. Basement was never found, therefore human trafficking ring cannot be proven. New World Order is another conspiracy theory that I hear from the right a lot, that there is this secret shadow government. And again, I mostly hear people talk about that as if it's fact almost when it doesn't even make any sense to me personally. And then of course, a big recent one, the reason why January 6th happened is the belief that the election was stolen. There are still people today who insist that the election was stolen. Again, more statements missing the language that I was talking about earlier, the maybes, mayhaves, I thinks, and I feels. Yeah, and then, there's also the fact that Democrats lost the election this time. So how come they rigged it once and then they forget, they stop trying? Like what's the explanation on that part of it, I guess? And then another big Republican or right-leaning conspiracy theory is the Great Replacement, that they believe that all these other people, all these immigrants, brown, black, you name it, anybody who's not white basically is here to replace the whites. I don't hear people talking about this one very often at all, but notice how I was able to just think of a list of right-wing conspiracy theories, and it was so hard for me to think of left-wing conspiracy theories despite being a leftist that I had to go look for them. And then even then, a lot of those were being talked about from Republicans, not leftists. But anyway, so we're aware of these conspiracy theories that are happening on the right. So let's go look up and see if we can find people making these claims. Let's start with QAnon. Oh, this is interesting. The first thing I clicked on happens to be a conspiracy theory about a conspiracy theory. They say, change my view. QAnon was a purposeful operation attempt to create division between Americans. We've all seen the effects of QAnon. What started on 4chan or 8chan and seems to most outsiders to be LARP of a Q level clearance, government operatives spilling state secrets, but was determined to be an account that near anyone could post upon for an unverified amount of time, and pointing a finger at a global takeover by literal Satanists had spiraled into a few offshoots with varying levels of wacky conspiratorial flair. Trump was still the president. There was a legal doctrine declaring him as such. He was going to come back into power with a military coup. B, same as A, but his VP of his new world was going to be a resurrected JFK Jr. And C, a few more believable theories that simply state that the Democrats are trying to eradicate American culture and Trump and consequently a fascist regime by the political right was the only answer. Now, for a time, I thought this was dumb luck. Some right-leaning people with a flair for manipulation of more mentally follower minds, they put that in quotations, follower minds, found their niche. But over time, with whispers of Russian bots influencing elections and certain right-wing talking heads, senators, and new anchors seemingly expounding positive reactions to a white Christo-fascist Russian society with no separation of church and state, and made me scratch my head. At this time, I genuinely feel there is more to it. This thought contagion of QAnon has certainly done some damage to American cohesiveness. I just want someone to tell me this isn't the case. Anyway, interesting conspiracy theory, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. QAnon has grown and evolved. Okay, so somebody says, can someone explain what was supposed to happen at inauguration according to people on the QAnon site? I've been seeing a lot of posts about how Trump or QAnon's plan failed and how they all feel stupid right now. From reading a couple of posts, it looks like the military was also supposed to get involved, question mark. If someone could explain what their plan was and why it failed and what QAnon even is, question mark. Is it a man, question mark. A social media site, question mark. A movement, question mark. What is the white rabbit, question mark. I just have a lot of questions and could use some clarity. Thanks. I'll just add a bit to what others have said, as they've already given you some broad strokes. Q was likely started as a troll that quickly took on a life of its own, and was again likely hijacked by another party when 4chan had enough of the attention the expletive deleted, stirring it brought to the forum and booted it off. It then migrated to 8chan and 8kun, run by Jim Watkins, an unremarkable, wealthy, alt-right lunatic. Alright, so this person says QAnon is a collection of rumors started in 2017 by an anonymous user of 4chan called Q, who claimed to have a high level of security clearance. The central point is that Trump was fighting a cabal of Satanist pedophiles in government and other institutions. This predated the prosecution and suspicious suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. QAnon invoked a strong reaction, including the FBI calling QAnon followers domestic terrorists. Most source material has been removed from social media platforms. 4chan and Vote remain the best places to read it. I don't know what inauguration day predictions were made. I didn't know that the FBI had called QAnon followers domestic terrorists, but that does kind of explain why it's hard to find the QAnon believers talking on here. So let's go change our search a little bit, try to find something else. Try to get some people who actually believe this nonsense. This person says, why are there so many conspiracy theories that are almost exclusively believed by the right? They say Pizzagate, QAnon, the deep state, the great replacement theory. Are there any wacky and or harmful conspiracy theories believed mostly the left? I assume they meant believed by mostly the left. Are there any wacky and or harmful conspiracy theories believed by mostly the left? This includes conspiracy theories like anti-vax, which were once pretty politically uncharged and now widely believed by the far right. Even a lot of high-profile UFOologists like David Icke are known for being pretty racist and anti-Semitic. Anti-fluoride used to be, see Portland voting to ban it 10 years ago, but now that's right-wing too. The far-left granola hippies were the birthplace of the modern anti-vax movement. Before COVID, you were far more likely to encounter anti-vax sentiment among the environmentally concerned than among those who roll coal. Interesting. Again, not what I'm looking for. This person says it's beyond frustrating that people aren't aware of Pizzagate. He said nothing else, just that. Somebody said people who have looked into it are aware it was a typical juvenile joke from 4chan that was fed to right-wing conspiracy nuts, has less basis than the Loch Ness Monster committing the crimes of Jack the Ripper, why you don't believe the claptrap, do you? Somebody said, yeah, it's very silly. Somebody said, well, it's not real for one. I hope you were just trolling, honestly. Somebody said, this is what people don't understand. The allegations were ridiculous, but it messed up people's lives. It was focused on a restaurant or two restaurants, depending on how deeply you dig. Months of constant harassment and threats for servers and cooks just trying to get a paycheck. Then some idiot shows up with a rifle. That place was 2 blocks from me, and I ended up there most Friday nights. When you know all of those people, it's not for the lulz anymore. And here's the lesson: none of these conspiracy theories are harmless. Pizza in DC, pets in Springfield, birth abortions in Virginia, dishonest poll workers in Georgia, all of these are lies that ruin people's lives. Right. So somebody on r/Christianity asked, "What is the New World Order about? I heard it's about the removal of religions and a start of a full world political revolution, but is that all?" Somebody said, "Take every right-wing boogeyman and stir them in a pot, throw in some hatred of Jews, and you've got the New World Order." Somebody said Project 2025. Here we have somebody sharing an article saying the New World Order is a term used in several conspiracy theories which hypothesize a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. So everybody that's replying to this person is either debunking it or saying it's just a conspiracy theory. This person doesn't seem to know that, asking the question. It just says, "What is the New World Order about? I heard it's about the removal of religions and a start of a full world political revolution, but is that all?" And considering that they were asking this on a Christian thread, I think it's safe to say that they thought that this was real. Again, there is none of that maybe, may have, I think, I feel type language. Okay, so this person is basically saying that they think the people in power are worshiping Satan and they think evil is coming, and that their sources are like government websites and the World Economic Forum website. So this person definitely believes in the New World Order. Despite all efforts, I never really believed in God. What changed my mind? It was the New World Order that I mentioned in the title. Wow. Okay, so the New World Order conspiracy theory is what made them a Christian, is what they just said. Said, what changed my mind? It was the New World Order. During COVID, I really started questioning stuff, and the more I looked into it, the more I found out about the world that I never would have believed. Finally, I heard about the New World Order. I started to look into it about what it is, why do people believe it, etc. I found out that people in power want the New World Order to happen, and they are doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to make it happen. Long story short, I started to believe that's really happening. I began to learn symbolism. Okay, so they're saying that the claims that they were seeing about the New World Order was that the people in power wanted to place a New World Order that would get rid of religion. I began to learn symbolism and started noticing how all the people in power keep constantly doing them. At first, I thought it just a coincidence. Everyone could be pictured doing some kind of symbolism with freezing a video or taking a picture at the wrong time, right? Question mark. I didn't want to accept the truth, but there it was right in my face. I kept seeing the symbolism they did constantly and eventually had to accept it. So these things that people were claiming were satanic symbolism. I've actually heard that one of these things is, the pictures of guys hiding their hand in their coat jacket. A lot of those were actually paintings, and the painter just didn't want to draw another hand. But I've seen people claim that that was a satanic symbol, and a few other things as well, I believe. But they're saying that they were seeing this symbolism, and that's what made them believe it was because they were actually seeing the symbolism. They don't explain how that symbolism actually ties to Satan, just that they were told that it ties to Satan. Somebody said it's gonna happen eventually, nothing we can do about it. Again, this is about the New World Order conspiracy theory. Somebody says it's gonna happen eventually, nothing we can do about it. Somebody says the symbols and number of the beast are indeed everywhere once you understand what to look for. I am frequently reminded of the film Matrix, where the world in which we see with our eyes is the one full of lies. and great deception, and the real world is the eternal one we cannot see. I can relate much of this and even the timeline, as it was in 2020 that the Spirit began to pull the veil off my eyes and started to put the fear of the Lord into me, really for the first time. Yeah, so this is a bunch of Christians mostly rambling on about their religion with the occasional, yes, I believe that. Um, so a little bit different language than what we saw with the Trump assassination conspiracy theory. Let's see if we can find anything about the stolen election theory. Oh, I did forget to talk about, there is a left-leaning conspiracy theory that the 2024 election was stolen. Let's look at the 2020 election conspiracy theory first, and then we'll look at the 2024 one. So can someone explain how the 2020 election was stolen? So there was actually only around 67 million people who voted for Harris in the recent 2024 election. There was 82 million for Biden. The difference is insane, 15 million. For Trump, it stayed around 72 to 75 million. When I see Dems pointing it out on X, there's always a Republican saying that those millions of votes never existed and that 2020 was stolen. But is there any real concrete proof of 2020 being stolen? And why do you think there are so few Harris votes? The Twitter files explained it all. The FBI spent an entire year pre-bunking the Hunter laptop story. When the Post notified Hunter they were running it, it took the FBI 4 hours to pressure social media firms to label it as Russian disinformation, despite the fact that they had already validated the contents of the laptop against Hunter's iCloud account. There is no disputing this happened. I don't know why they're talking about the Hunter Biden laptop when the OP is asking about the election. So far, there's only circumstantial evidence, though I'm not super on. We know for sure that 2020 was an outlier in terms of total votes cast and Democrat votes cast. We know Biden got a metric fuck ton of votes late at night. We know Biden was the first president in decades to lose almost all the bellwether counties and then wind up still winning. We know Harris did not outperform Biden even one single county, which is unlikely unless the 2020 totals were just erroneously elevated, and so on. The reality is that our elections aren't secure, and until they are, anomalies like this, even if they're not malicious, will cause people to be suspicious and distrustful of the process. So most of this stuff is more recent, and people are actually coming up with rational arguments as to why they do not believe this. Here's somebody talking about the 2024 election saying, what's up with people talking about suspecting the 2024 US presidential election was rigged or otherwise tampered with? I've been seeing a decent amount of online conversations about how all the reporting and firsthand experience gave the impression that voter turnout would too huge this year, only for the reported turnout to be less than that of the 2016 election. People are then making the jump that maybe the party who has been screaming about election fraud for years actually found a way to be successful doing just that, hence the discrepancy of voter turnout, and also why that same party is silent about any possible interference or fraud now. The only other thing I've seen these folks point to are the only thing I've seen these folks point to are a handful of cryptic and suspicious things Trump and a few people around him have said over the past few weeks, which I agree, they are cryptic and suspicious, but that's not enough to make me question if the election was hijacked. Is there any evidence, circumstantial or not, that would make a reasonable person suspicious of election interference and or fraud in this election? Are there ways to audit the election process if needed? Maybe the voting machines have an audit trail where you can see actual votes cast as votes reported. If an election was rigged in any number of ways, what signs or evidence might be left behind? Somebody said, I have not seen any evidence of widespread voter fraud. Each state manages its own election and they all have processes for verification, and we'll be doing that over the coming weeks. Then each state will certify their votes. If there is a clear indication of fraud, then it will be heard. Many of the competitive states that voted for the Republican nominee have Democratic governors who appoint the members of their state's board of elections, so they don't have an incentive to cover up anything. This person says that they think that people believe in that theory because a lot less people voted this year. There were reasons why people didn't vote. This person said that it's because Donald Trump is a convicted felon and has a history of cheating, which again goes back to the other conspiracy theory about the attempted assassination, that that's just Trump's personality. It's not hard to believe that he would do that. I can't find a lot of people talking about the 2020 election. Anyway, so I hope that that was enough to show what I was talking about, with there being a difference in how conspiracy theories are typically talked about on the left and how they're typically talked about on the right. Again, just coming back to this board for a quick second. Left starts here, goes that way. Right starts there, goes that way. People over here tend to say a lot more maybes, mayhaves, I thinks, and I feels, and I just don't see that much of that on the right. If you feel like that's not true, go ahead, give me your evidence. I'm down to be proven wrong if you can prove me wrong. And obviously, I think that the correct way to talk about conspiracy theories is as fellow concerned citizens with no evidence. We say, I think, I feel something feels off. I think that this could have been faked, that kind of phrasing. I think that that is not only totally reasonable to expect, but it's kind of our obligation as citizens to point out when something seems fishy, right? But we also shouldn't be running around making these claims as if we do have evidence. And we definitely shouldn't be allowing our politicians to talk about conspiracy theories the same way an average citizen would. Politicians have a lot more weight, they have a lot more eyes on them. People are going to take what they say a little bit more seriously. So even if they say, I think or I feel, people are going to interpret that as, oh, this is somebody with more power than me. This is somebody with more information than me who thinks this. So it's probably true. We don't want that happening. We don't want citizens assuming something is true just because a politician is the one speculating. Don't let politicians speculate. That really needs to stop. Anyway, now that I've gone through the conspiracy theories on either side and how they are discussed, I I want to know what you think. Again, if you can prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Do you think I covered this accurately? Is this how you see conspiracy theories discussed? Is there anything major that I missed? Things like that. Just let me know what you think. I do plan to talk about propaganda in my next video, so if you're interested in learning more about that, hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, hit the like button and have a great day or evening or night. Bye. Ow.